Welcome back to the Diamond Breakfast. We pick up from where we left from, where we are joined by the Patriotic Front Member of the Central Committee in charge of Information and Publicity, Raphael Nakacinda, as we look at perceived hypocrisy during times of mourning. And Francesca, you did ask a question, maybe for the sake of those maybe tuning in now, we'll just go through that again.
All right, Mr. Nakacinda, welcome back. Are you able to hear me now?
I can clearly hear you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good morning.
So now the question is, was former President Lungu in order to make such a statement that he probably knew would spark such a divisive debate?
Well, I think to start a conversation by wanting to examine whether he was on order or not, I think is not appropriate. I think the former president did make a statement, which I think if we were to examine it and reflect on it from a positive point of view, would help the country. The former president's statement had an advice and call for us to be genuine in our relationship with one another as a people. And that obviously, as it was witnessed during the funeral, there were many things that were said, which clearly were basically people playing to the gallery. And to that effect, an advice of that nature that as a people we need to be genuine, expunge from our lives hypocrisy. Basically, hypocrisy means, presenting yourself in a manner that you are not, saying things that you don't mean, and or maybe saying one thing and doing another. So, and that that statement, as it was general, and to that effect, I want to believe that those who have reacted negatively to it, possibly it may just be that the shoe fits them, and therefore they are reacting in that sense. But as a people, we sure that when we have such occurrences of, say, a head of state or a former head of state die, or indeed politicians die, do we have genuine conversation around these people? And if you remember, a few days ago, I did react to the debate that was going on and gave a historical perspective on how we have treated our leaders, from Dr. Kaunda to Dr. Chiluba to Dr. Mwanawasa to President Rupia Banda, now President Sata, and what is happening right now, even on this conversation, there are people who are even have the audacity to make a call to Diamond TV and say, if you have stolen, and so on and so forth. Who says President Lungu has stolen? That is coming from a particular narrative, and I think those are some of the things that we're supposed to interrogate. Thank you.
Some sections of society have attributed his remark to being about the current president, Hakainde Hichilema. From where you're standing as well, do you think the shoe fits for the current president? Because he did eulogize the late president. In fact, he spoke at a state funeral. He spoke also during the church service at the Anglican Cathedral of the Holy Cross. What do you think about this?
I mean, that statement involves everybody, including myself, the person that you are, interviewing. I am called upon to reflect. Am I hypocritical in my discourse as a politician, as a person? And would it be that some of the things are reflected on President Lungu were genuine, or basically they were just being done for purposes of cameras? What were my views just a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, a few months before he died? Not that basically I should be able to discuss those issues, but if, for example, my opinion was totally different, the best is just to keep quiet. So all that the president was calling upon all of us is to be genuine and not to be hypocritical. And it doesn't preclude the current head of state. Even him, he is expected to reflect and be genuine in his discourse as head of state, in the way he relates with the people that he has been, he has offered himself to serve, and they have given him that opportunity to serve as head of state. So there's nobody left out, including including President Lungu himself.
Okay.
That call also affects him, that he also is expected to, rise up, above and be genuine and make sure that in our relationship and as it relates to the Zambian people, he is genuine. So it's a statement that all of us should reflect on from a genuine, as it were, an honest view, so that the country can move forward, confronting each other or at least engaging each other based on truth and honest views that we hold.
Okay. So now, as someone who has had and probably still, does have a political and personal relationship with the former President Lungu, do you think that he values the efforts made publicly by President Hichilema to get rid of any possible animosity between the two of them?
But, one of the things that sometimes we don't appreciate, President Lungu demonstrated a high level of statesmanship. Even when I think you heard the testimony of President Chimweka, the former president of Tanzania, on how even the handling of the transition demonstrated a high level of statesmanship, not only on the part of President Lungu, and I think the accolades also went to President Hakainde Hichilema. And I don't think President Lungu has ever shied away from engaging in dialogue. I think sometimes we have a short memory. From 2016, if you remember, from 2016 through to 2021, President Lungu has always been preaching and making himself available for genuine dialogue among stakeholders, especially with the issues that came after 2016 elections. If you remember, he even went to an extent of allowing organizations like the Commonwealth and others to come and try and foster dialogue to just make sure that this country remains on the path of being peaceful and deal with certain issues that I think stakeholders were raising. Among them, amendments to the Constitution and other issues. If there is a political organization and a political leader that actually was very disruptive in that all 5 years, was the UPND and Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. And today to start saying that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema is a champion of dialogue and he wants to embrace people, I mean, it's a facade. And I think we need to reflect, more. Today to try and attribute the attendance of opposition leaders, particularly the main opposition, to state functions and national events like the one that we just had of morning President Rupia Banda. I mean, it cannot be attributed to some conducive environment created by Mr. Hakainde. It is because of the civility of Patriotic Front, maybe because we had the opportunity of being in government, and to that effect we can distinguish or differentiate between partisan events or political events and the national event as it were, like the funeral of President Rupia Banda.
Mr. Nakacinda, why we ask on why these efforts are being appreciated is because for a good number of members of the public right now, they did not see this as something that would happen, especially if it was in the other way around, because former President Lungu is on record of having, made his intentions known to have President now Hakainde Hichilema arrested. And recently, obviously with the church service, we even saw the two leaders sitting on the same bench, something that a good number of people wouldn't have expected or seen under President Lungu's regime then. And that's why we ask, don't you think that the efforts being made so far need to be appreciated?
I don't know. You're trying to compare mangoes to apples. And that's where we sometimes miss the point.
What do you mean by this? Please explain.
Look, are you telling me that during President Lungu's time in office, former heads of state never sat next to him? I'm sure you know that was the case with President Kaunda before he died. It was the case with President Rupia Banda in all state functions and so on. What happened in having President Lungu sit with the Hakainde on the same bench is not extraordinary. It's a normal thing. It happened with President Sada. It happened with President Manawasa. It happened with all presidents. Maybe the only time that there was a bit of a gap in that regard was during President Chiluba's time. I think Dr. Kaunda seemed not to have seen eye to eye with President Chiluba and I think if you remember that. But that was a normal situation.
But Mr. Nakacinda, sorry to cut you there, but if we're being realistic also, I mean, a few months after, especially with some of these leaders who took over power, what was seen between some of these leaders, it took some time before some of these leaders could even sit down with former heads of state, especially the ones who they took office from. And precedence is there as well with some of these leaders. If we talk about former heads of state with current heads of state sitting in unison as such, it was rarely within those who are just the incumbent and the immediate predecessor. It would usually be ones from before. So looking at the space of time before the previous president, the current president, and what is being done now, you still feel that it's not one to be appreciated or anything extraordinary?
But don't you think that then you should appreciate, in this case, the former head of state, who even when he lost an election, and sometimes what has been witnessed in certain jurisdictions and places is that there will be some kind of animosity between the one who lost and the one who was taken over. But for him, he has risen above all this, not only in this event of mourning President Rupia Banda, but I know that there has even been some engagement, privately between him and President Hakainde Hichilema at the request and possibly